What's up guys, John here and welcome back to John Moon Studios. In this week's video we're going to talk about how to set up multi-timbral instruments versus multi-output instruments and what the difference are between the two. So let's get right to it. Alright, so we're going to start off by setting up a multi-timbral instrument. And what a multi-timbral instrument is pretty much, there are 16 MIDI channels that are available in a given plugin or third-party instrument or the instruments inside of Logic. So these 16 MIDI channel outputs are pretty much going to be under a single plugin, which is the advantage of using multi-timbral instrument, because you're essentially using one plugin that's going to feed 16 different channels. So I'm just going to go ahead and use 4 for this instance. I probably won't even use all 4, but I'm just going to open it just in case. And I'm going to open up a simple instrument from Logic. So this is the ESX sampler. And I'm going to pull up a piano patch. So a couple things to keep in mind when you're using multi-timbral instruments is all the faders, all of the automation, all of the panning, they're linked together. So you can't have individual control over these different channels when you're mixing at the end of the day. So notice how when I move these faders, all of them are moving at the same time. If I move the pan knob, all of them are moving at the same time. So you start to see a little bit of the disadvantages here, but again, let me just show you the full function of multi-timbral instrument and how it might benefit you in your workflow and your style of writing. So with the grand piano here, it's going to be a really good way for you to see how this works, because if you're not a pianist and you can't play two hands at the same time, you could divide them by using these 4 channels or however many piano tracks you want to have. Again, you could choose up to 16. And what you could do is you could divide left hand and right hand and then any overdubs you want to do. And the cool thing is that you're doing all of this while saving RAM and CPU, because remember, you only have one instance of the ESX sampler loaded up, not 4. So if you just opened up 4 tracks and put 4 different ESX samplers, you're pretty much eating the RAM of the computer, because now it has to load up 4 different instances of it. Multi-timbral allows you to only have one instance of it. So now let me just go ahead and record a little bit of it. I'll record a little chord progression, just the left hand, then just the right hand, then probably like some little embellishments on top of it, so you could see how it works and how this one instance of ESX sampler is pretty much controlling these 4 different channels. Or in this case, I'll probably just use up to 3. So let's just go ahead and record something. Okay, so that's a very simple bass line. Now I'm going to go ahead and just kind of play, the upper chord of it or the rest of the chord of it on the right hand. So I'm going to go ahead and start this over. Right, so there I have my upper, my right hand, my upper voices. I filled in the rest of the chord, right? So not to get too technical of what I'm playing, I'm just kind of giving an example here. So this is my chord progression, and now let's say, I want to add an overdub and I want to put kind of like an arpeggiation, or, just playing the notes of the chord. And I want to do that overdubbing these 2 parts. Let's see what happens. Start all over. Alright, so that's pretty much what multi-timbral does. You can have one instance of the ESX sampler, and you could record 3 different piano parts, and it'll be just fine. So you're pretty much saving CPU, you're saving RAM, and you're not eating up the computer memory. Now again, the only downside to this is you can't have independent control of each of these tracks because they're all linked together by this one instance of the ESX sampler. So that's really the biggest downside, at least to me, because even if you're trying to do let's say some audio processing, it has to be on the main track. So if I open up the mixer here, this is the only track that's here. So if I play the part again, the only thing that's moving is that one track. So again, you don't have a lot of freedom when it comes to post-production. So when it comes to mixing, when it comes to doing your processing and getting it ready for the final mix, it's very limited in that sense. Now if you're using it how I'm showing it here, where you're just using a piano sound and you're just doing overdubs, then I guess you can have some freedom. But really the only way you can control the volume of each part is how hard you actually hit the keys, which in essence it's the velocity. So if I hit it hard, it's going to be loud. If I hit it softer, it's going to be softer, of course. So that's going to be your only form of really expressing yourself when it comes to doing a live version of these volume changes. So that's pretty much multi-timbral. I'll be honest with you, I don't personally use this, but you could kind of see what it does, and you could fit it into your workflow. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to see an instance of using multi-timbral instrument, but with a third-party plugin. Now there are some advantages here when you're using third-party plugins, but that's pretty much one use of it using the ESX sampler. So I'm going to go ahead and open up an instance of Play. So Play is an engine to hold sample libraries, East West sample libraries. So I'm going to go ahead and open this up. Okay, so it's loaded up here, and I'm going to go ahead and open up a few patches here. So let me do like a legato French horn. I'm going to load that up here. We're going to do 3 trumpets, again legato, and I'm going to add it here. And then I'm going to do a low brass patch. Let's just do a long. Alright, so here we have 3 instances inside of this Play engine. So what's cool about the Play engine is that you can actually load up multiple patches from your library. So I opened up French horn, trumpets, and low brass, and you could do a variety of things. So I could put like strings. I could pretty much fit an entire orchestra here and use the 16 channels and literally just have one instance of the Play engine and then 16 channels of orchestra. But again, we run into that limitation of the faders, but we're not going to mind that right now. So what you could do here is you can actually set up these instruments to play on these specific MIDI channels. So if we look here on the screen, you see that there's instrument 1 and then channel 1, instrument 2 and then channel 2. And if we actually look at the inspector menu here, so you open it up by clicking this I or pressing I on the computer, you're going to see here that it says MIDI channel 2. If I click 3, it says MIDI channel 3. 4 says MIDI channel 4. So what this means is that signals only coming out of instrument 1, MIDI channel 1, instrument 1, well, we could rename this, but it's instrument 1 here, and then MIDI channel 2, and then instrument 1, MIDI channel 3. Now, if I play just a note, we're going to get sound from all of the patches here. Right? So how do we go ahead and divide this so that I can get, let's say, French horns on instrument 1, the trumpets on the channel 2, and then the low brass on channel 3? Well, in the Play engine, you can either do it from the mixer menu or you can do it from the browser menu. So I'm just going to leave them both open. You could click here where it says Omni, or you can actually go to the name of the patch and click where it says Omni there. And I'm going to go ahead and set it up to 1. This means that now the French horn is going to be coming out of 1. If you leave it on Omni, it's going to come out of all 16 channels, and we don't want that. We want to split them. So I'm going to go ahead and put the trumpets in 2, and then the low brass in 3. Alright, so we set up our 3 patches here, going to MIDI channel number 1, MIDI channel number 2, and MIDI channel number 3. And you could see the instances of these channels displayed here on the player. So you could see it from the mixer view, you could see it from the player view here where it says channel, and then you can also see it on the sidebar of the play engine. So let's go ahead and see what happens now when I play this instance of channel number 1, which is supposed to be the French horns. So right, so we're only getting French horns here, so it seems to be working. Now to activate the trumpets, we need to actually click on channel number 2 here, and we just simply play. And there we have trumpets. And now we're going to go to channel number 3, and we're going to go ahead and we're going to listen to our low brass. And I think this might be a little bit too loud. Let me play with the expression a little bit here. Right, so there we have, one instance of the play engine, and then we have 3 separate patches loaded up here. And again, we're just using 1 instance of play, not 3 different tracks with 3 different play engines, and then running, these 3 different sounds. Believe it or not, it starts to add up, and you could see here that with these 3 patches open, you have 897 megabytes of RAM already being used. So if we start playing, let's see. You can start to see here where it says CPU and disk, you start to see the memory go up and down and see how much this is actually consuming. So just imagine 3 instances of this playing at the same time, and all of these numbers are moving up and down, and you have let's say 50 plus tracks, and what do you do? So this is the true advantage of having multi-timbral instruments. Now again, the biggest drawback is going to be the fact that your volume and all of your automation and the panning is going to be it can't be separate, so you have to kind of like find a workaround that, because all the faders move at the same time. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to jump into multi-output instruments. So to show the multi-output instruments, what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to remove all these tracks. Right, and we're just going to open up, without checking the multi-timbral box, we're just going to open up a software instrument. And I'm going to go ahead and use, again, the play. But this time, I'm going to use where it says multi-output 9 times stereo. So the benefit of using multi-output is pretty much you can have, again, 1 instance of the play engine. But now with the multi-output, you saw I could use 9 different instruments and route them to different outputs. So the benefit of using multi-outputs is you can have 9 different, in this case, 9 different stereo outputs, but you have independent control of volume knobs, volume faders, the pan pots, and any automation that you do, and you can manipulate each of the channel strips and add effects if you want, just to one part of the signal, and add effects to another track of signal. And you're going to see how I'm going to use this and how you can actually take advantage of this. So the way you would use a multi-output, or I would use a multi-output, is I would actually use it on instruments that technically do come together, like drums, but you really want to, separate each of the signals. So in one, instance of a track, you can have all of the MIDI data for the drums, so kick drum, snare, toms, cymbals, or you can have about, 5, 6 different instances of it, and you can route each output to, a kick track or the snare track or the hi-hat track. So I'm going to go ahead and again open up my Play Engine, and I'm going to pull up a drum kit. So while this loads up, it's automatically going to load up 5 different patches. So it already kind of separates it for us. But notice how all of them say Omni and all of them say main, left, and right. So if I play on the keyboard the drums, right, it's all coming out of one output. So now remember, we're using the multi-output here, so we got to take advantage of those multi-outputs. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and we're going to go to the mixer of this, and we're going to look at the bottom part here where it says output, or you can just look over here on the right side, again, if you're using the Play Engine. And you're going to see that when you click on it, there's going to be a main, left, and right. So 1 and 2. Then you're going to have 3 and 4, 5 and 6, 7, 8, so on and so forth, right? And you see that it goes up to 18, but remember, we're only using 9 multi-outputs because that's what we chose in the settings. So we're going to go only up to, I believe it's 7, 8, or 9 to 10. So I'm going to go ahead and route the kick drum to main, left, right. So 1 and 2. I'm going to go ahead and route the snare drum to 3 and 4. Hi-hat to 5 and 6. The toms to 7 and 8. And then the cymbals to 9 and 10. So now, what happens now? Let's see. Nothing. So you actually need to do another step here. You actually need to open up the mixer, so you can hit X on your keyboard or hit the mixer icon. And you're going to see these plus signs in here. You need to actually open them because you need to see your outputs. And notice how it says Play Engine on the first one. But again, it's the only instance of Play Engine that you have here. But now we have Play 3 and 4, Play 5 and 6, 7, 8. And notice how it starts to line up with our outputs here. So before we actually see the routing, because right now we don't have independent control yet. It's not visible in the actual main editing, the main screen here. We only see it in the mixer. So how do we put it so it shows up in the main screen here? We're going to have to actually right click on these tracks and then hit Create Track. And aux1 will show up here. And now when I hit my snares, you will see it pop up on the aux track up there. And again, you could see it pop up in the mixer track, but I generally don't have this open when I'm writing music, except when I'm doing little tweaks to sounds or when I'm mixing. So I want to see it on the main screen. There we have it. All right, so now we're going to see where we have, let's see, we have the hi-hat. So again, you need to create the track. So another way to pull up or create a track is you can hit Control on your keyboard and then you hit T. There's aux number 2. So now you see the hi-hat up there. And again, you could rename all these things. So if you're like me and you like shortcuts, if you hit Shift and Return at the same time, it's to rename. So I'm going to call this kick. Hit Tab to go to the next one. This is going to be snare. And then we have hi-hat. There you go. And again, you could do this for all of these tracks. So again, Option T and then Option T. And then this is what? Toms. And then this is cymbals. Alright, and now if I hit my toms, it's going to pop out in the toms section. And if I hit cymbals, it's going to come out in the cymbal section, right? So that's pretty much how you would use multi-output. You have to actually set it in your main track where the you know, software instrument is, you need to set it as a multi-output. So multi-output, if you just hit stereo, the plus and minus sign won't appear. You have to hit 9 times stereo, or I'm going to show an instance of Kontakt, because I know the Kontakt is a very popular, you know, third-party library or engine to have. So I'll show that in just a second. But this one has 9. Let's see, Kontakt has 16, 25. So yeah, Kontakt is just a whole nother beast. But this is how you would, or how I would use multi-output if I were to do, like, let's say drum tracks. Now, that was an example, because so what I do with drums is I lay it out all in one MIDI track, and then since I have it inside of the Play Engine, I just open up the mixer here and actually use the SSL console that comes with the Play, with the East West. So if I open up like kick drum, I can actually equalize and do everything I want to do inside of the Play Engine. So that's why I just leave it all on one track. And I just use, you know, one track to control pretty much everything. And I control the balance of the drums here. So I don't even use it for the multi-output, you know, benefit. But if that works for you in your workflow, traditional drums, of course, when you record them, all these drum tracks are separate anyways when you're recording them with microphones. But for since I have flexibility here inside of the Play Engine and I can do all of the mixing inside of here, I decided to just do all of my mixing of the drums in here using the SSL here and all the cool, you know, stuff that comes with the Play Engine, East West. So now we're gonna go ahead and we're gonna use Kontakt to show you how to do all this. So I'm gonna go ahead and just start all over. So I'm just gonna delete all these. So again, I'm gonna open up a fresh, you know, new channel, and I'm not gonna hit multi-timbral. I'm just gonna hit create. And this time we're gonna use Kontakt, because Kontakt actually has a very specific way to do this. So again, I'm gonna put Kontakt, and I'm gonna use, again, you can see that this one has 16 mono and 16 stereo. I just use stereo, and then I do the panning. So let's just see. Okay, so here we have Kontakt opened up. So now there's actually one more thing you need to do with Kontakt in order for it to work, because as you see here, we have the plus or minus sign here, and we can assign you know, different outputs to Kontakt. But inside of Kontakt, you will only see, if you haven't, you know, changed these settings, you will only see stereo output 1 and 2. That's it. You have to actually configure something inside of Kontakt. So let me just open up an instance of, let's see, Majestica strings here. Okay, so in my case, if I hit outputs, you're going to see 16 different outputs. And let me show you how to do that right now. Because if you have not done this step, if you don't see 16 outputs or anything different, and just see outputs 1 and 2, you probably haven't done this. Alright, so now we're going to talk about how to actually set up the Kontakt output settings. So you're going to go ahead and you're going to click this window here, and you're going to hit where it says outputs. So I already had it up here. And what you're going to do is, you probably won't see all of these outputs if you've never done it before. You'll probably just see 1 and 2. So I'm going to show you how to get that to work. So we're going to hit the plus sign here. Quantity is going to be the amount of outputs you want. So again, we only have 16 MIDI channels per instance of Kontakt. So, you know, we're going to just choose the maximum amount. So we're going to go ahead and raise this up to 16. And the number of channels is going to be 2. Because we want them stereo. And then where it says host output, we're going to put stereo 1. The ascending output assignment, you're going to highlight that. You're going to highlight delete existing channels, and you're going to highlight this to make this your default configuration. Because I don't see why you wouldn't have to, or you wouldn't want to have these 16 channels in here. So we're going to hit OK. And then you're going to see output was saved as default, okay? And then there you go, you should see your outputs showing up here. So now that we did that, we can go ahead and just close out the output menu. And here I have an instance of Majestica string open. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to minimize that because that's already set to stereo 1 and MIDI channel 1. So we're going to go ahead and minimize that, and I'm going to open up a shorts patch. Now this one automatically is going to show up as MIDI channel 2, but we need to assign the stereo to stereo 2. So now again, just like we did in the play engine example, we need to open up with the plus sign the other stereo output, right? So you're going to see 3 and 4 here. And again, we're just using one instance of Kontakt, but we're doing 2 different outputs here. So now you're going to see if I play on 1, you're only going to hear the longs because it's on stereo 1. You won't hear the shorts unless we create the track and highlight it up inside of the main track editor. So we're going to go ahead and Control T, and now you opened up, or you created the track that's inside the mixer. So now when I play and it's highlighted, you have your shorts. And again, you can have up to 16 different instances of whatever it is that you want to have here. And again, you do have independent control over the knobs here. You see that they're completely independent from each other because again, they don't share the same MIDI information, if that makes sense. You're not really, this is not based off of MIDI at this point. This is just based off of outputs. MIDI just helps play a role because now you can choose, the different outputs to be a specific MIDI channel. Because if you put it both on one, then you're going to be hearing shorts and longs inside of instrument 1 or channel 1 up here. So the advantage of using MIDI here is that you can have in one Kontakt instance, you can have 16 different channels or different patches inside of this one instance of Kontakt. So you could see a little bit of the freedom that you have here. And again, I don't personally use these choices, even though I probably should, to save some RAM and CPU. But you see that you have a lot of flexibility, and you can see how you can adapt these things into your workflow. What I do is I literally open up an instance for each, simply because I'm a control freak. And I also like really detailing, each of my sounds. Even if I have a replica of, let's say, 2 piano sounds, they won't be identical. I'll always tweak one a little bit different than the other, simply because, I'm trying to create textures for my scores when I'm working with film and TV stuff. So that's how you set up the multi-output. And I showed you an instance using the Play engine, and I showed you the instance of using Kontakt. The multi-timbral stuff you could do with the Logic stock instruments, of course. And we saw the pros and cons of each, and how it could kind of fit into your workflow. And hopefully this helps you design a workflow that works for you. You kind of create a template, and then you open up that template, and you have all of your signals routed, and you're pretty much good to go. Instead of using 5 instances of Kontakt, you use 1. Instead of using 8, 10, 11, 12 instances of the Play engine or the Logic samples, you're just using 1. So just kind of keep that in mind, and always monitor your CPU, which is up here. If you just click on one of these, let's see, you could see how your cores are performing. You can see how your drives are performing. So always keep in mind that every time you open up a sample and you reopen it, kind of like the method I use, you're eating up CPU and RAM, and that could pretty much cause the computer to crash. But again, you want to be monitoring those things. If you found the information of this video helpful, go ahead and hit the like button, subscribe, and don't forget to hit the ring button so you don't miss any of my weekly videos. If you have any questions, please drop your comments down below and I'll get to them as soon as possible. Don't forget to share with your musician friends. I will see you all soon.